Okay. I don't know if you make New Year's resolutions. If you are like most people, you do. And if you are like most people, you don't keep them. The latest round of research says 8% of people actually follow through with their New Year's resolutions. So the big ones tend to be lose weight, eat healthier, get organized, and stop spending so much and save more money. Okay, for adults, that tends to be the newer, healthier, more financially prudent, which, as we've seen, doesn't really work. 8% of people apparently end the year skinnier and richer, and everybody else doesn't. So I'm going to challenge you with a different New Year's resolution of sorts. Here are some words from Scripture that are very sobering. You're not going to see these words written on an inspirational t-shirt at a Christian bookstore. When people pull this one out, it tends to get pretty serious in the room. So this is Jesus talking at the beginning of Matthew 7. So read along with me if you've never read this. This is Jesus saying, look, judge not, that you be not judged. For with the judgment you pronounce, you will be judged. And within the measure you use, it will be measured to you. Why do you see the speck that is in your brother's eye, but do not notice the log that is in your own eye? Or how could you say to your brother, let me take the speck out of your eye, when there is a log in your own eye? You hypocrite. First take the log out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to take the speck out of your brother's eye. Now, if you've been a Christian for any length of time, if you've gone to Christian school, if you've gone to church, this is a familiar passage. And it's an important one. Because if you ask people outside of the Christian church, how would you describe Christians? Sadly, two words come up more than any other: intolerant and judgmental. Not exactly a welcome to the Christian faith, be like us. So what do we do about this? We're going to think about judgment for the next 2 weeks. And it's a tricky topic. And it's not a particularly fun one, but it's a really important one. But I also think, and this is my hope for the next 2 weeks, we can look at it in a way that makes it manageable. It makes it something like, okay, I can really do something about this. This is actually something I've been working on over the last year, right? And trying to really put some action steps to it rather than just try not to. If you've ever tried to break a bad habit, it usually doesn't work just trying to tell yourself don't. Like if you've ever tried to stop saying bad words, right? You can do pretty well, and then you screw up or stub your toe or something, and then all those words you've been saving up over time, all come out, and you're like, oh, jeez, I stink. All right? So we're going to try and approach it in a different way here. But I want to address this question first. Is all judging wrong? Now think about this for a second. We have people whose job it is to be a judge. Okay? You can literally be a judge, Supreme Court justice on down. Part of my job is to judge. Part of a parent's job is to judge. You and I make judgments all the time. You make judgments about what you wear, about what you listen to, about what you say. You react to what you hear. You react to what you see. You make the call. Part of what you're going to have to do as you get older is make judgments about who you hang out with and what you do. So if you have some friends that go, hey man, let's get together and do this, and you're looking at it going, oh, that seems kind of shady, and you say no, which by the way is probably the right decision, but you've made a judgment, but you haven't necessarily judged the people. And there's a big difference. So the kind of judging we're talking about is the kind of judging where you unfairly and really without any credibility condemn people, judge them to be, and this is the key, judge them to be less than you. And you basically said, because you do this, because you say this, because of this, you're less. And we don't have the right to do that. So that's what we're going to address, and specifically with these two questions. First, we're like, why do I do this? Because nobody likes to be judged. Nobody likes it, and we know we shouldn't do it, yet it still happens. So the question is why? Why do we do this? Because none of you, I'm assuming, wake up and go, today I'm going to be judgmental. It's going to be a great day. Nobody does that. But yet it happens, and it happens really quickly. And then the second one is, okay, what can I do instead? So rather than just going, don't, and there's a place for that in life. At some point, you just have to be disciplined and go, I'm just not doing that. But I think there's a different way we can go. Instead of thinking this, instead of saying this, what if I thought this? So that'll be the 2 parts today, and then there'll be another part next week as we go through. So that's where we're headed. All right, so let's talk about the first issue of being judgmental. And it does not have to do with being a Seahawks fan, but here's what I mean. When you talk about Seahawks history, and you're young enough, Seahawks have been a team since 1976. So I was 6 when Seattle got a team. Most people, when you talk about Seahawks history, will go all the way back to last year. Right? Because when you win the Super Bowl, that has a way of defining your organization. And so there are 2 plays in Seahawks history that are very famous plays, and both of them are interceptions. So the top one in the NFC Championship, where Richard Sherman tipped the ball to Malcolm Smith that beat the 49ers, that we went to the Super Bowl, and then Malcolm Smith's interception in the Super Bowl, which put the Broncos to bed and brought home the trophy for Seattle. Those are great interceptions. But if you're old enough, you may recall another interception, which brings us to our first issue. Does anybody know who number 85 is there in white? Who's a kid? I know Molinex knows, all right. Anybody know who this guy is? All right, we'll get to him in a moment. So here's the scenario. It's 2003. The Seahawks have made the playoffs, and they are playing a wild card playoff game against the Green Bay Packers in Green Bay. At the end of regulation, the score is tied at 27. So now they're going to go to not just overtime, but sudden death overtime, which is where we pick up our story.
Just ask Matt Hasselbeck.
Seattle has won the toss.
We want the ball, we're going to score. Oh, boy.
That was over the PA system here at Lambeau Field saying we want the ball and we're going to score.
Hasselbeck was partly right. One of his passes did lead to a score.
The pass is picked off. Intercepted. Back the other way. The Green Bay Packers advance. Many of the headlines will talk about what he said at the coin flip.
Such was the nature of sudden death in the playoffs.
So I was watching that game with my wife, and I think we had 2 kids at the time, and we were watching at my brother-in-law's house. And my wife, those of you who had Mrs. Olson for 6th grade computers at 3 points, she's pretty calm, she's pretty chill, except when she watches football. And she got really mad for that interception. Like I just kind of moved away and didn't talk for a little while. All right, she got really upset, and the whole room just went sour. And we got pouty, and then we started in on Hasselbeck, who was quarterback. Like, you idiot. Like, how could you throw that? You throw an interception, you shoot your mouth off, we want the ball, we're going to score. Well, they scored, and you're a moron. All right, I mean, that was really kind of how we felt. Well, Hasselbeck, for about the next week, just got killed for that interception. I listened to a lot of sports radio. And sports radio was all about Hasselbeck and the interception, and you can't make that play at that time. And they were calling out the coaches, and how could you call that play? And anyway, because it was game over. And I was the same way. You can't do that. How could you? You've let me down. You're a failure. Yeah, it's a little dramatic, but my opinion changed in the next week when Mike Holmgren, who was the coach of Seattle at the time, went on sports radio and talked about this play. And he said, I know that Hasselbeck's getting killed for this. But he said it wasn't his fault. Now, part of it is, football, the quarterback always gets more credit than they deserve when the team wins, and they get more blame than they deserve when the team loses. He says, I understand that. But he said the real issue was not with the quarterback, but with the receiver. Because this is what was supposed to happen. That play is known as a timing route. So he says Hasselbeck takes a short drop, and he throws the ball to a spot, really without looking. Kind of look away and then fire. He says the receiver is supposed to run exactly 4 yards from the line of scrimmage and stop and turn around, and before he's even run his 4 yards, the ball's in the air. So in other words, he turns around, boom, there's the pass. You got a nice 4 or 5 yard gain. If you break a tackle, you can go even more. He says the receiver just kept going. He ran too far. Receivers are supposed to run to very specific spots because quarterbacks can thread the needle. It's incredible how accurately they can pass. And so the problem is the receiver ran too far. Hasselbeck threw it where it was supposed to be, but the defensive back, Al Harris, realized the ball's in the air, he's still running, and I just won the game. So he said, had the receiver run the route they were supposed to run and do it like we'd practiced, it's a good play. At worst, it's an incompletion. But instead, he didn't pay attention, ran too far, yet the quarterback got killed for it. So if you'd asked me before hearing that, you said, Mike, have you ever played football at any level? No. Have you ever coached football at any level? No. Do you have any understanding of what kind of play was being run? No. You ever been in that situation at all? No. But yet it was a bad play, Hasselbeck's an idiot, and the Seahawks stink. Yes. Like, do you hear how ridiculous that sounds? Well, this is what happens when we fall into ignorance. When we fall into ignorance, we realize, I don't know very much. I don't know. I watch a lot of football. Well, football's incredibly intricate. I didn't know it was supposed to be a 4-yard play. I just know the quarterback threw an interception. Well, why did he throw an interception? Well, in part because the receiver didn't do his job. It's like, you had one job, all right? And he didn't do it. And so I started to think about, over time, I realized, you know what? I don't know very much. I don't know a lot about most things. Yet it's very easy, and we become very judgmental when we think we do. And so instead of saying, I know what's going on, next time you're in a situation where you're tempted to be judgmental, do this. Pause and think, what don't I know? What don't I know about this? And this might be the situation, it might be this person. What don't I know? And what I have found is by doing this, I stop. And instead of going, you're a, insert negative word here, I'm going, what do I need to know? What more do I need to understand? Because most things are more complex than they first appear, right? Which leads us to our second item. This is Van Halen. Now, I don't know if you know anything about Van Halen. See, as I do this every year, I realize I'm getting older. You couldn't listen to the radio in the late 70s and through the 80s and not hear Van Halen. They were one of the most influential and popular hard rock bands around, all over MTV. It was found. I was 11 when MTV came out, so I was an early adopter, and they were on all the time. Van Halen was famous for several things. Their music, the quality of their music, but also their live performances. They had a huge stage, they had a huge sound, and they had a lead singer named David Lee Roth, all right, who is this guy right here, Diamond Dave, and he did not lack for confidence, all right? So since you're young, you need a little musical education. I'm going to give you 2 minutes of Van Halen, and Mullenix is going to be rocking in the back there, I guarantee it, all right? I could just imagine in the band meetings where they're like, you know what we need? We need to light the gong on fire. You know what would be even better? We need to light the gong hitting thing on fire too. Yes! Anyway, one of the things that Van Halen, and I don't know if you noticed, their stage was large. Here's another example of their stage. Van Halen just did everything big. So big, in fact, the average band would have 3 18-wheelers to carry all their stuff to each concert hall. Van Halen had 9 18-wheelers full of all of their light and sound and instrument equipment. And so if you take a look at that stage, I mean, just look at the lights alone. Good grief. The amps, the stage, the flooring, and the power output. I mean, the amount of hearing loss at a Van Halen concert was staggering. You're not going to just put this together, plug it in and hope for the best, right? It's not a computer. Plug it in, turn it on, you're good to go. This was an incredibly complex process, and they were the only band that was really doing it this way. So they had very technical setup. Van Halen became famous in the 80s for a bowl of M&Ms. Now, when you think of rock bands and all of their depravity, usually you don't think of M&Ms. Like, you might get a cavity, you be careful. All right, that wasn't where it was. Now, I need to explain something. Every band that tours has what's called a rider. And a rider is a term for the contract that's involved and the stipulations needed to make sure that that concert comes off like it's supposed to. And so where musicians, and some of them are notorious, like Mariah Carey's concert rider is crazy. Like the things that she wants. I want fluffed pillows, and I want water that's chilled to 62 degrees exactly, and I want, anyway. Well, Van Halen's tour rider stipulated that in the dressing room there was to be a large bowl of M&Ms with all of the brown ones removed, which means that somebody had to go through and pluck out by hand every single brown M&M. And if the band went backstage upon arriving at the arena and found even one brown M&M in the bowl, they would freak out and threaten to not play. Right. So word got out about this, and they thought, all right, okay, Van Halen, we get it. You're rock stars. You don't wear shirts. Your pants are too tight. You like to party. We get it. But now you're just being divas. Now you're just being jerks. You're just making some minimum wage stagehand have to sit there and go, that one's brown. That one's brown. That one's red. All right, that one's red. Right? You're just jerks. Because, well, they're rock stars. Rock stars just do things because they're rock stars. They're just self-indulgent. Well, here's the truth. The main guy behind this was David Lee Roth, who was the lead singer. And so David Lee Roth, first thing he would do when he'd get to arenas, he would go backstage and he would go right to the bowl of M&Ms. And if he found even one brown M&M, he would go to the head of the production crew at the arena and he'd say, you will now go through every single line of this rider and double check it, because I guarantee you will find a technical mistake. And every single time this happened, they found a technical mistake. Because here's what Van Halen needed. Because of the size of their stage and the power requirements that they needed, the stage had to be set up exactly so. And if it wasn't, not only would it not sound good, but it might destroy the equipment. It may become a danger. They said it has to be set up just right. So what they did is they stuck this brown M&Ms clause into their tour rider in between all these technical specifications. Because here's what they knew. They didn't have time as a band to get there and go, okay, we're going to go through and check everything. But if we go backstage and we see that there are no brown M&Ms, that means they read the contract. That means they read the rider. That means they set it up correctly. Because every time there was a brown M&M, somebody screwed up. They didn't read the contract, and they just kind of did it in a half-baked way. So all of a sudden, when this became known, David Lee Roth went from being a diva rock star jerk who just wants to make some lowly stagehand pluck M&Ms out of a bowl to an operations genius. Because they realize we need a way to check. We need a way to make sure that our stage and our sound is set up right. And this was their way of doing it. Because if there were no brown M&Ms, then they figured it out correctly. Okay? That's brilliant. That is brilliant. So what you see here is a case of oversimplified stereotyping. In other words, you see how a person looks, or you see what they do, and you go, oh, well, because you're this, that means you're like this. So it was just really easy to write off Van Halen and David Lee Roth and go, you're a rock star. All you want to do is party, and you're arrogant because you just want to make people do your job just because you can. You're just making life difficult. Nope. They were brilliant at their job. And so when you learn this, realize, oh, there's a reason why they did the M&Ms this way, you realize maybe there's more to the story than I know. Maybe things aren't as simple as I thought. And we do this constantly. When I first got to SPU, where I went to college, SPU is a Christian school that has a 3-to-1 female-to-male ratio that is full of a lot of elementary education and nursing majors. So when I got there, I was 6'4", about 270 pounds, and I had long hair, and I wore torn-up skateboard T-shirts. So people didn't know what to do with me, and so they thought I was dangerous. I was like out on, parole or something, and they kind of just stayed away from me a little bit. And then they found out I was an athlete, and then it was like, oh, he's not dangerous. He's dumb, okay? So that's less threatening when we can make fun of you, behind your back because you're big. But that was generally kind of the thinking. And then people got to know me, and I remember people telling me like, oh, you're actually kind of, and then they would say nice things. So what they did is they just reduced me to a stereotype. You're a big guy and you're an athlete, so I'll speak slowly, right? I mean, that's really kind of what they thought. Now I didn't ask for that, and they didn't know me. Right? And I'd kind of gotten used to it, but then later on, it became, he's on steroids. He's on steroids. I got drug tested 3 times as an athlete in college, and the very first time, the guy who was setting up my testing, they have to ask, like, have you taken any illegal steroids or performance-enhancing drugs? And I looked down, no. And he literally looked at me and he's like, you sure? I mean, I eat too many burritos, but yeah, I'm pretty sure that I'm not putting anything in. And he just, right? And I just remember thinking, are you kidding me with this? But that was the belief. Now, why might he think that? Have there been big athletes who've taken drugs? Yep. Like, I get it. But there's that assumption, well, because you fit this stereotype, that means you're like this. They're saying, man, you don't know. You don't know me. So next time you're tempted to just stereotype somebody, and boy, we do this a lot, think, what else could be true about this? This is what I'm tempted to think. What else might it be? What else could be happening? Right? And again, it stops you in your thought process and go, okay, hold on. So the first one says, okay, what don't I know? And the second one says, okay, but what else could be true? Part of that is assuming the best. Because when we are judgmental, we assume the worst, and we take on a real critical spirit. And it happens quickly. It happens quickly. Okay? I would submit to you that your parents have probably shown this spirit while driving. I don't know what it is about driving, but it turns us into, like if a person makes a questionable driving decision, it's not, oh, they just made a mistake. It's, you're an idiot. How do you get through the day? You're a danger to humanity. And it comes out quickly. All right? You will experience this in a couple years. So here I'm going to leave you with some post-chapel reflections. And this is intended to be group discussion-wise, but I'd like you to think about this. So at BCS, where is judgment alive and well? We just need to be honest that it's an issue. We got to call it out. And then where do you see examples of ignorance and oversimplified stereotyping at BCS? Where do we do it? Because let's be honest, we're all paying attention, and we're all thinking things. Okay? Judgment is a problem for out there. It's a problem in here. And it's a problem for people. It's a problem for people anywhere. And then finally, why do you think we do it? Because we know it's wrong and we don't like it when it happens to us, but why do we do it? What is it about our heart? What is it about our spirit that pulls us into this? So I'd like you to talk about that in your clubs after this and to try to be really honest about this. Right? We're not trying to out anybody here, but just think about what is it about our spirit that keeps this going? This thing that nobody likes and nobody wants is here. What do we do about that? And then that'll set us up for next week. Okay? So let's pray, and then we'll get you out of here. Reminder, immediately after this, Mr. Sloan is in the back, CPR Club Group 2. If you are interested in that, see Mr. Sloan in the back of the room. The rest of you go to clubs for post-chapel reflections, all right? Father, give us the courage to be real and honest, and help us to take a look at our heart as we think about why we operate out of ignorance and why we stereotype people. And why we do something, Lord, that we don't have a right to do. And to do it in a way that is honest and that we can grow in this area and grow for your glory and the good of others and our own good as well. In your name, amen. All right, thank you, folks. See you later.